Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at @itchJessino. How are you guys doing? Let me know in the chat box how you guys are feeling. Slowish news day, nothing too, big on the transfer front today. It was just kind of like a normal day at the office, you know what I mean? So obviously the big transfer story of today is Jadon Sancho going to Manchester United, which I think we all knew was going to happen. It's two, summer transfer windows in the making. And so that is a huge signing. And I know that that's going to increase the anxiety in the Arsenal fan base, because we feel like we need to be able to keep up with the Joneses. But ultimately, I think we need to just focus on ourselves, not worry too much, and not, transferred, our anxiety over to the transfers that we will be making in Tavares and Lokonga, and trying to compare apples to oranges. I think the signings of Tavares and Lokonga, we don't necessarily know how they're going to pan out. I think it's hard to determine how these players will work out for us next season or in the future. But ultimately, we're talking about two young, high upside players that could be really good for us, and we could make some money from if we decided to sell. And also in that same vein, if it doesn't work out, it's not like the outlay was so huge that we can't, sell them on, So for me, these are two really good signings that we should still be excited about, even though, our rivals are making these huge purchases. We have to remember that they're quite a bit further along in their progression and in their project per se. And they're also, in a different maybe financial situation than we are at the moment. So even though I think that that's a huge signing, for Manchester United, and a really good one at that, Jadon Sancho is a very, very good player. Let's just worry about ourselves, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to be talking about the creative midfielder / number 10 problem at Arsenal. There's a lot of, kind of conflicting reports on whether we're in for a creative midfielder or just a midfielder in general, if we're going to move from a 4-2-3-1 into a 4-3-3. And I honestly feel like the midfield signing, whoever that is, will kind of give us a better idea of the direction in which we're moving into. I guess a example of that would kind of be, if we were to go in for somebody maybe a little bit more like a Renato Sanchez type of midfielder, I think that would kind of signal that we're going into a 4-3-3 with Thomas maybe sitting kind of in the similar way that we saw at the end of the season when Thomas was playing kind of like as a lone pivot. I don't think that worked out very well, but I'm not going to say that that won't work in the future. Obviously, those were just very under pressure situations with Emile Smith-Rowe and Odegaard playing on either side of Thomas. There just wasn't enough two-wayness with those players in those positions. They were playing like 10s instead of 8s. So if we were to bring in somebody like Renato Sanchez, I would think that that's a clear sign, in my opinion, that we're moving into a 4-3-3. And so that kind of changes the game a little bit in terms of who that next signing would be, or if that signing would come in anyway. there was a report that had come out today about, Arsenal being interested in a striker and a creative midfielder. And so if that's the case, then that feels like moving into a 4-3-3, that person would be more of a two-way 8 type of player versus, just an out and out 10. So we'll see what happens. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box before we just get into actual names. Tony says we have ESR, CM party partner has to be the next big signing. Ivy says, hey Jess, you're missing the cool cap you wore yesterday. Thank you. I mean, that was because I just could not be bothered with my hair at all, but maybe I'll wear it again. Dublin Gooner says, can we just take a moment to congratulate Spurs on the appointment of their 23rd choice manager? I mean, the search is over, it's just so interesting because, I feel like Everton and Spurs are in that weird position where they're trying to stay relevant and keep up with the top 5, and hiring these big managers, and it just hasn't worked out. Spurs with Jose Mourinho and Everton with Carlo Ancelotti just hasn't really worked. And I don't really understand why what's going on with my phone? Oh, it's back there. So they don't really understand that they're just not really on the level. Like, you know what I mean? It's without those big name managers, they can't attract big players. And instead of just trying to build, from the ground up and build at your level, they're trying to cut corners by having these big name managers. Now, Nuno is, I think a project manager, but I don't necessarily feel like he's going to attract the type of players that they probably want. And then you have somebody like Rafa Benitez that's just a better Sam Allardyce in terms of his fixer ability. So both of them are those are not great appointments in my opinion. They can go really well, but I don't really think they will. So yeah, we can laugh at them. So now let's get into it. Oh, and I just wanted to touch on really quick the whole Saliba thing, the news that had come out from GFFN that, the entire time that we were thinking that the club was, Arsenal were the reason why Saliba didn't go out on loan the last summer and ended up having to stay. And then we loaned him out in January, that was Arsenal's fault. But now just to find out that it was actually Ren who, dithered around and didn't get the loan deal done. It's crazy. Like, it actually wasn't Arsenal. It was Ren that drug their feet because they wanted Rugani instead, and it ended up falling through. And Saliba felt disrespected from that, but it really wasn't on us. And they held on to that news for like a year and let Arsenal look like the bad guy for a whole entire year with the Saliba situation. So I think it just kind of goes to show, and even with me, I was somebody who really believed that the club had dropped the ball there. I think it's important to remember that media outlets are not always correct, and their whole job is to create clicks and frenzy and hype amongst the fan bases. And so for them, it was a better idea to allow, our fan base and everybody around to think that Saliba was being mistreated by Arsenal, because that's a way better story than Ren dropping the ball. You know what I mean? So it's just a big lesson, to be learned, and so, but it always depends on where your agendas lie. And at that time, I really was quite upset that Saliba didn't feel like Saliba was getting a chance. So that's definitely why I believed it. But now I'll definitely, take some time and just kind of back away and say who gains the most from this news being true. And at the moment, it was the French media, because making Arsenal look bad is something that the French media likes to do. And it gets a lot of clicks, so it's very interesting, just to kind of see that they held on to that for a long time. And wow, horrible. So let's get into it. Let's get into it. All right. So let's just talk about, our options here. I think it's so up in the air because, again, some reports are saying that we're looking for a creative midfielder and a central midfielder. Then now reports are coming out that we want a creative midfielder and a striker. So you guys let me know in the chat box what you think is more important. Do you think we need a central midfielder and a creative midfielder, or do you think we need a striker and just one midfielder to come in? Personally, I'm still not convinced that we need a striker. It's like if we have extra money, which I don't think we will, then yeah, of course, address the striker situation. But if you're telling me that it's either, the central midfielder, if I could get the creative and this central midfielder, I would take that over the striker at the moment. I'm not quite sure that we need the striker, but so that kind of changes the game a little bit. So let's talk about somebody that we've been linked with in James Maddison. So I think it was James from Gunner Blog that was writing for The Athletic that kind of, threw some water on that whole rumor and said that, the price would just really, for James Maddison, would just kind of take Arsenal out of the equation altogether. We really like the player, but the price is a big issue. But also he did have, what's his name? Somebody Gutierrez in that report when the Nuno Tavares deal was pretty much already done. So I would say I would take that as a grain of salt. I'm not really sure how close he is with the club and how much he would know about Arsenal's financial situation and whether or not they would actually go for James Maddison. I also think that a club's positioning during the transfer window is really important. And if you start acting like you have unlimited funds, then you'll never be able to get a good deal. So it may be in Arsenal's best interest, if they are interested in James Maddison, to set the precedent that we don't have an unlimited amount of money. So we'll look for a fair deal at the end of the transfer window for him if we're actually really interested in him. There's a lot of people that are like, well, it's The Athletic, so it's correct. But I mean, David Ornstein did also say last season or last summer that we wouldn't get Thomas Partey because we didn't have the money for it. So that's just kind of like another, just another example of how, the media feels like they know stuff and sometimes they just make educated guesses. But ultimately for me, like, I still think James Maddison might be on our radar, but instead of going into the window at the very beginning saying, we'll pay whatever you want, you say that you don't have the money. And then at the end of the window, you say, okay, well, 55, and see if it'll go over, you know what I mean? So now from a profile perspective, James Maddison to me is a traditional 10. He has a little bit more about him where he's, he has some pressing about him. He can play off the left or off the left-hand side, right behind the striker, as well as in an 8 type role. But for me, he is a 10. And what makes him different to somebody than an Odegaard is he's a goal scoring 10, which is something that I feel like the further we get into the window, I'm thinking is really important. The 10 or whatever creative player we bring in has to be able to chip in with goals. And when I say goals, I mean like 10 plus goals this season. Like, they need to be able to really contribute, and we need to know that they can get it done. For me, James Maddison really kind of hits that. He has that ability to score goals, whereas Odegaard was more of a passer. He was more Ozil-like in a way, where he would prefer to make the final pass than shoot. Maddison is more like, I'm taking the shot. So, and he scores quite a bit of goals, so I really do like that about him. And I think that that's a quality that we should look for. We need players that want to take responsibility and be the ones to score the goals. We can't have people that want to defer to everybody else. Right now I think we saw it towards the end with Saka. He was starting to really get that I'm the guy that needs to score. And I think that'll come with Emile Smith-Rowe too. But we have too many players that will just take the pass instead. And that's not really what we need. So I think James Maddison would give us that. Obviously, he has a really nice pass on him. He's a really good player. There's obviously questions about, why is he not, first on the team sheet anymore for Brendan Rodgers? Why have they potentially fallen out? Is he a bad influence? Is he coming to maybe maybe he's not at his peak, maybe he's falling off a little bit. I tend to think that we start to make up things about players when we're not quite sure we want to spend that amount on them. And for me, James Maddison is one of the best creative players in the league. And I don't understand why we wouldn't want him just because Brendan Rodgers is switching his formation around and he's not first on the team sheet for Leicester. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I think he would fit us perfectly. And I think he is in a position in his career where he can make a big move and not be phased by being at a bigger club and having to be the number 10. I think Arsenal is kind of desperate for a player to step into those Ozil shoes per se, and just kind of take the team, by, the scruff of the neck and kind of push us forward and propel us forward and be the man. And I think he'd be perfect for that. Not only that, he played with Vardy, who's low touch kind of striker, pretty similar to Aubameyang. Obviously, he's more of a terrier, more of a bulldog type of player, but ultimately they do pretty much the same things. And he's worked really well with him. So I like James Maddison. I'm not sure if that's a deal that we will get done. But I mean, if we ended the transfer window and James Maddison was our starting number 10 and he would, share time with Emile Smith-Rowe, or Emile Smith-Rowe would play on the left, I would say that that's a good signing because I know he can score the goals. He fits the profile. He's 24 years old. He needs to be starting for somebody in order to get back into the English national team. So he has something to work towards. The price is high, but his transfer market value is just about that. I think it's about 60 or something like that, or 50, 55, something like that. So that's how much players cost, that are quite good. And I think he would move the needle for us. I think he would change the complexion of this team. And not only from the perspective of what we do on the pitch, but making a statement about Arsenal and what our intentions are off the pitch and our commitment to being one of the bigger clubs. With it really shouldn't matter, but statement signings do make a difference. And for me, this would be a marquee signing. So what are you guys saying about James Maddison? The first comment I saw on here was I literally just saw Dele Alli. No, you guys. Alam says Maddison can operate as a CM and a cam. He would be perfect. Dav says, do you believe in love at first sight, Jess? Because I'm starting to believe it with you. Great content. Thank you. PSF says it almost sounds like Arsenal are starting from scratch. We need to. We need to. Gary says, good afternoon, Jess. Good afternoon to you as well. Football fan says, Arsenal signed more players than Chelsea. I'm surprised than top 4 next season is on. I'm not sure. It depends on who we actually get. Gikasi says, Maddison is very good, but do not rely on. Okay. Gikasi says, so it would be good with ESR. Yeah, I mean, I think he's just the type of player that you can bring in, and I think you can rely upon him and have him split time with Emile Smith-Rowe. I think we do need somebody who can lead the team and be responsible for being that number 10, but we don't want to over rely on him like we've done with players in the past. So having Emile Smith-Rowe kind of playing off of him, playing with him, and instead of him, I think it's good. I think that would be a nice dynamic. But at the same time, I really do understand the anxiety around it because Jack Grealish was the biggest name this season, but the season prior, it was James Maddison because Jack Grealish was almost relegated, so I think we look for reasons because we're afraid if they have maybe some rough edges or they're not completely pure, then we're a little bit anxious about it, but let's not act like James Maddison wouldn't improve us massively. He's one of the top players in the league in his position, and I hear the injury things, but he's actually not that injury prone. When I pulled up his injury record the other day, he really doesn't have a muscular injury issue. It's just more little injuries and knocks here and there. And quite frankly, if you're talking about Renato Sanchez and you need to look at his injury record, because for me, his is atrocious. He has muscle injuries all the time. So I get it. He's not the most hyped. Maybe the spotlight isn't really on him at the moment. Maybe it's more about Jack Grealish. He's more the guy, James Maddison missed out on the English national team. But I think we also have to remember that we're in a position where we're not going to be able to get the Jack Grealishes. So if you tell me the next level down is James Maddison, I just don't understand why we would be upset at that. I really don't. But that's just me. IP says Maddison and ESR should be more than enough as long as the players up front are doing their job scoring goals. Exactly. Rawinder says Arteta likes players who work hard. Maddison is not one of them. I'm not sure that he doesn't work hard. I mean, his pressing numbers are quite good, for somebody that plays in an attacking position. So how do we know he doesn't work hard? What does that mean? Does that mean that he's not running senseless? Is it a rumor? What is it? Mankey says, really refreshing to see truly informative and engaging fan page, always willing to carefully analyze media speculations with a cool head and not always spinning negative agenda against the club. I try not to, but if I'm honest with you, it's not like I'm not perfect. Sometimes if I'm not feeling great, anything can feel like it's real, but I'm also willing to say that I'm wrong. If things like if I was believing something and then I later find out that I was incorrect, then I'm more than happy to say that I was wrong. And George, who comes on the channel quite often, likes to back me off the cliff. He likes to pull me away from, the abyss sometimes and give me some good perspective on things. So on this channel, we do try to see all sides and make sense of things because it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes in the Arsenal fan base. It's kind of stressful. Aaron says, who honestly thinks Maddison would leave Leicester for Arsenal? I mean, if he's not going to start games for Leicester and he wants to get into the English national team, then yeah, he'll leave. If we're willing to pay him what he's worth and Leicester is willing to take our bid, then he would go. We're still a big club. Like, I think almost Arsenal fans force the narrative that we're not a big club, maybe so they won't get bantered by their friends or something. But he would if he needs to start and we can convince him that we have a spot for him. Why would you stay at a club where they're actively trying to move away from a system that suits you and into a system that doesn't even really include your position in it? So, I don't really, why would Maddison leave Leicester for Arsenal? What has Leicester actually achieved in the last couple of years that's more than what we've achieved? They've not made top four. They haven't gotten further than us in the Europa League. I think they've only finished above us the last 2 years. They won an FA Cup, but we won the FA Cup the year prior. So I think all they've really done is finish above us 2 years in a row. But that's it. What have they actually achieved that would make them such a bigger proposition than us? It's not like Leicester's ever going to do, they're never going, I'm not going to say never, but at this point, their business model is based on bringing in young players and building them up and then selling them for high profits. When you do that, you're never really in a position to win the Premier League. That's not the way that you do it. So if we're willing to show ambition, we have a spot for him, he feels valued at our club, we're still a bigger club than Leicester. So I'm not going to start, making it seem like Leicester is a bigger club than us or a better club than us just because they finished above us 2 years in a row, but have actually done nothing of note better than we have. Let's see. Yeah, Arsenal is not even just a bigger name. We're just a bigger club. We're just a better club than Leicester. They've just been, I think the year that we finished 5th, like the first year that Unai Emery was in charge, I think they finished 9th. Like, you know what I mean? Like I get it that they're the hottest thing, but like they're not bigger or better. They just ran well and we're trying to make a change. So I'm not buying into it, to be honest. Let's see. Yeah, Leicester, they are a better team at the moment, but why would he regress at Arsenal? I mean, he's not exactly improving at at Leicester anymore. Again, if they're not going to play a system that involves you in it, and you're not going to be the first name on the team sheet because the manager and you don't get along, then why would you stay at that club just to sit on their bench because they're better than Arsenal? It doesn't make sense, especially when they're not even making top four. I mean, basically, if you're not in the top four, we're all pretty much the same, hanging out underneath the top four. Like, what do you get for finishing fifth? You don't get anything for that. So yeah. So mixed reviews, but the thing is I realize that he's not the most popular because I hate to say this, but a lot of the fan base, it's based on hype. It's the players that had the best season, has been talked about the most. And next season, it'll be somebody else. Maybe Jack Grealish goes to Man City and has an indifferent season, and then somebody else has a really good season, then it's that person. But I just can't get around the fact that we're not going to be able to get the perfect player all the time. And if the next level down from Jack Grealish is a James Maddison who infinitely approves his team, is the perfect profile, has played in the Premier League, I just don't really get it, but that's just me. So let's talk about ESR. Maybe he's the option, right? There is still a chance that maybe ESR is the person that should be starting as our number 10 or our creative midfielder through the center next season. A lot of Arsenal fans feel that way. And I love that. I love that thought process that we believe in ESR so much that he should be starting, in the number 10 position next season. And once he signs his new deal, I feel like he should get whatever number he wants and all that kind of stuff because he's a big part of the future. And I think it's just important for us to remember the player that Aston Villa wants to replace Jack Grealish with is ESR. So we have a player similar to him that's just at the beginning of their kind of development. So I'm excited to see where Emile Smith-Rowe is, where he progresses from this moment to the end of the season, see how good he's become, because I really do believe in ESR's talent. Now, the issue with ESR is that without proper backup, I feel like we're putting a little bit too much strain on his body. We know that he tends to pick up little injuries here and there, little knocks here and there, and we have to be really careful because we want him to be able to play more later. So we have to kind of play him less now. That's not to say that he can't start in the 10 position. I just think there needs to be a rotational option there. And I would prefer it not to be somebody like a Coutinho or somebody like that that's going to drag our wage bill down, or a Fekir. So if ESR were to start in the number 10 position, another way to kind of supplement him a little bit and not have him have so much pressure on him is to bring in another creative player that plays off of the left. So that would be somebody like an Aouar. We can talk about him a little bit, even like a Christopher Nkunku, who we'll talk about a little bit as well too. So with ESR, I think it's important to lift the performance burden on him, the numbers that he would have to get in that 10th position, by supplementing those numbers with other players that can also get those goals and those assists. So there's not as much pressure. And then also making sure that there's at least somebody that can take the strain off of him in terms of playing time, so he doesn't get injured like super often. But I think if we were to say like, okay, well, we're going to get the central midfielder, next to Thomas Partey, play Emile Smith-Rowe, and then bring in a striker, that's not necessarily a bad idea. Like, I don't think it's the end of the world. I just think we're putting some pressure on Emile to get our 10 has to score goals and has to be able to get, at least double digits in assists, so it's putting pressure on him. And I'm not sure that he can get there in just one season after playing maybe 4 months in the Premier League. But if that's a risk that the club is willing to take, I back it because I do believe in his talent. I just think we may fall short, so you guys let me know what you think about Emile Smith-Rowe maybe being that creative player, and maybe us bringing in another creative player or a striker or something else instead, because there are a lot of Arsenal fans that believe that ESR is just the guy that we should go with. And that's perfectly fine. Just we have to take into consideration the injuries and the amount of goals and assists that this player will have to give us. And do we think Emile Smith-Rowe can do that right now in his progression? He's only 20 years old, quite young. All right. Football fan says, I can see Arsenal getting a new manager next season. I feel it will be Potter. Okay, so yeah, just talking about any old thing today. Sean says ESR needs to be carefully managed. The fans' thirst to boast to other fan bases about our players is just too much for me. Results are more important than an individual. Demsexy said Demsec. Like Demsexy? No. We need to build depth into the team for when we get back into Europe. Thomas says Fekir is a waste man. Dublin Gunner says, agreed, Jess. We have to be careful not to break him like we did with Wilshire. Exactly. So, I mean, we just have to be careful. We just have to be really careful. So for me, ESR would not be my first option. Like, I would prefer us to bring somebody in, maybe somebody that can also play a little bit deeper or play in another position, and just swap ESR with that person to just take the burden off of him, because 4 months, or whatever, December to May is just not a big enough sample size for me to place all of my eggs in his basket. Like, I think we need to bring somebody else in. I really do. You guys, I see all these things about Locatelli, and I said it earlier, I don't really know that Locatelli, I mean, he wants to go to Juventus, so do we really want a player that wants to go to another team to just settle with us because we could pay the money? I'm not sure. I still don't even believe that. I think we've inquired, and maybe Sassuolo is just saying that we are ready to give the money to force Juventus into doing something. I'm not sold on it. But yeah, ESR could be another option. But at the same time, we need to be very, very careful with him. So let's talk about Houssem Aouar, which I think is a really interesting option. He was such a big focus of last summer that I don't believe that the club is not interested in him. I just don't think he's a number one option. And I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's, the attitude issues or whatever, the perceived attitude issues that he may have, whatever. Maybe they don't want to deal with his agent anymore because there was some issues with his agent last summer, supposedly. So, but in terms of Aouar, the player and the profile, we've spoken about him a lot on the channel. And I think he has like elite attacking ability at a pretty young age that would be very useful for an Arsenal team that lacks ball progression, the ability to take people on one-on-one, an all-around type of player. I know he doesn't really defend well, but in terms of his offensive ability, he can do more than just one thing. He can pass, he can shoot, he can dribble, he can do all those things. He's quite confident as well, which I like. So, and he can play in multiple positions. He can play as a left 8 as well as a left midfielder or left forward, which, if we want to play in a 4-2-3-1, he can play off of the left. If we play a 4-3-3, he can play left center mid. And that does satisfy the creative midfielder position. That satisfies it. Whether it's a 10 or an attacking 8, it satisfies that need. Even if it's somebody that plays off of one or the other sides, like even like a Buendia, who for me has always played off of the right-hand side for Norwich. I know some people say that he played as a 10, but ultimately he's a creative player off of the right. And Aouar is pretty similar, a creative player off of the left, although he does tend to play a little bit deeper. So he's somebody that I would consider, especially from the price point of like 30 million. He's another player that's very keen on going somewhere else, keen on going to Juventus or keen on going to Real Madrid. I'm not quite sure he's on those clubs' agenda. So it would feel a little bit like he might be settling for us, which isn't a great feeling. But, 30 million for a player like him, it's still kind of risky in a way, just because we're not quite sure what we're getting. But that's the thing, is when you spend a lot less, this is a player that it's not really like a super big risk, because the outlay is not that huge, but you just have to know that there are going to be rough edges there that you're going to have to deal with. Maybe he's not the perfect fit. Maybe he needs an adaptation year. Maybe he doesn't have the best attitude, things like that. So those are things to take into consideration. But for those of you who want us to move to a 4-3-3, This is the type of player that would allow you to do that, but we'd still be missing the right 8. We'd still be missing the player on the other side because you'd play Aouar, on the left. You play Thomas, as the sitting player, which is not my preferred thing for Thomas, but you can do that. But the player on the right-hand side, the right 8, would still be missing. So I'm not quite sure. That's why I kind of question whether we're going to move into a 4-3-3, because it would require us to bring in 2 players and not 1. So I don't really know. Like, I'm not really sure, so, but what do you guys think of Aouar? I know on this particular channel, people are very split on him, which makes a lot of sense. Players that, again, are not hyped are perceived to have fallen off. I think we have to really be careful about saying players are no longer good just because they had an off season, because we've had 2 of our best players, 2 of our only world-class players, Thomas Partey and Aubameyang, both had pretty up and down seasons last season. But I wouldn't even begin to start saying that they've fallen off or they're not good anymore because they had an off season. I think Aouar is pretty much similar to that. Somebody who had a lot of hype around him. Everybody wanted him the season prior, but because he had a bumpy season, which he still got 8 goals, I think, and 6 assists, which isn't bad for a player that didn't play all the time. I mean, is he just shit now? Like, no, he's not. You know what I mean? And even Maddison, a player that still was able to put up pretty good numbers despite not being in the starting 11 all the time. Is he crap now just because there's not a lot of hype around him? No. Do they fit the profile? Yes. So can we not foresee maybe some sort of redemption, or maybe them just going through a slump and coming back into form? It happens all the time, so Aouar is somebody who, if at the end of the transfer window we brought him in for like 30 million, I wouldn't be upset by it, but I know that there is a chance that it wouldn't go right. But at 30 million, that you could probably sell him back to France for basically what you bought him for, because he's only like 22, 23. I think he just turned 23 today, actually. So I don't think it would be that bad if it didn't work out. See, Dublin Gooner says, I think people are unsettled that his value is halved in a year. I mean, his value was never what they were asking for. They wanted to make a lot because of the pandemic, and they were desperate to sell players because, France has been going through a crisis for the last 2 seasons. So because he had, basically, it's pretty much similar to having the tournament thing in the Euros, nobody was really talking about him until we were linked with him, and then he had those good games in the Champions League against Manchester City. It was just a very small sample size of, a couple of performances that kind of went viral for him. And when you capitalize on that, it's very similar to what fans want us to do with Granit Xhaka. He had one good game, against, not one good game, but he had like a spectacular game against France. So now we should tack on a couple of zeros. Add, the fact that he was probably already worth about 25 or 30. Then he played in the Champions League against Manchester City, which is a very high profile, opponent. Add a couple of zeros onto that, on top of the fact that France is going through a crisis, on top of the fact that you're dealing with a loss, who is a notorious negotiator that doesn't want to give up his players for anything less than what they're worth, So I think it's not about his value has decreased by half, it's the hype has decreased. So they can't ask for as much as they really probably wanted to last summer. He was never worth 60. Never, not in a million years. He was not worth that. Never. 30, yes, that's about what he's worth. Most midfielders that we're looking at are probably worth between 30 and 40, with the rare exception of Maddison, who's English, and that's why his price is a lot higher. So, yeah. Thomas says, Aouar gives me the impression that he would need at least a year to adjust to the Prem. That's a very, very good point. And so that's why my preference is to go with somebody that has a little bit more experience and can kind of just step straight in, because we can't really afford to have somebody that needs an adaptation year. But I mean, you have to take, you either spend more for the player that we know can do the job and is going to not have to take a lot of time to settle in, or you bring in the player that is going to need some adaptation and take that risk and pay half, So pick your poison, pick your poison. So let's see. Usopp says, Aouar seems a little too fragile for me. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not he's not like Emi Buendia where you see him flying into tackles and he's quite aggressive. He is more of a flowy kind of, that kind of player. He's a little bit more like smooth on the ball and stuff. He'll get knocked around in the Premier League for sure. Kind of similar to Odegaard in a way. I thought he was quite light. He didn't really seem to be able to deal with the physicality of the Premier League. So that's a very good point. Oh gosh. Okay, let me look at this Fabrizio Romano. You guys are saying it. What? What now? No way. Come on now. Not real. There's no way. Okay. So breaking news. I'll share my screen. I mean, Fabrizio Romano is very connected in terms of Italian news, but I'm not sure if maybe he's just pushing this narrative. I'm not sure. I just don't believe it. Sassuolo CEO Carnevali to Sky Sports says Arsenal have made an official bid for Locatelli. They're pushing hard to sign Manuel, and it's an important bid. We will see. Also, Juventus want Locatelli, and we've a special relationship with them. We've a new meeting scheduled with Juve. Yeah, for me, this is just they're trying to push this. They want Juventus to come up, and this is the Sassuolo people talking, which is in their best interest to make it look like there's a lot of interest in Locatelli. Nobody from Arsenal side, not a Chris Wheatley or Ornstein or anybody has said that we've made this bid. So until they say it, I'm not quite sure I believe it. And again, the end of the message here that's really important is also Juventus want Locatelli, and we've had a special relationship with them. So speaking about Juventus, they're not just talking about our bid, they're still talking about Juventus, and we have a new meeting scheduled. So chances are that new meeting will take place and Juventus will cough up the money and he'll go to Juventus. I just don't see him coming to Arsenal, you guys. I'm sorry. I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but I don't see it. I don't. I'm sorry. Sean says last summer fans wanted us to pay 60 million for Aouar, so why the fuss with Maddison? Because it's all about hype. If players are not hyped, then all of a sudden they're no good. That's how football Twitter kind of works. That's how the football world works. But it just is what it is. You know what I mean? I still think both players improve us, but just in a different way. You guys, I really wouldn't get too worked up about the Locatelli thing. Fabrizio Romano is very connected with the Italian media. Their CEO said that on Sky Sports. I really think they're trying to put pressure on Juventus to cough up the money. That's where he really wants to go. They've said little things like he's not afraid to go abroad or whatever, but it just feels like there is a negotiation tactic. I'm sorry, you guys. I just don't believe it. Dublin Gooner says, sounds like we're being used to get Juventus to pay out. Familiar story. Yep. But it's okay to be optimistic. Like if you want to be optimistic and believe that, then that's perfectly fine. Like I don't want to ruin rain on your parade. I just don't, I got to be honest about how I feel about it, but I mean, he would be a good signing. We've said it on this channel that I don't know. He's not the type of player I'd want for the center midfielder position, so if we get him, cool, but I'd prefer somebody else, but that's just me. All right, let's talk about somebody that we haven't ever spoke about on this channel before, and Pedro Goncalves. So look, this player is somebody that I didn't really know about until a couple of days ago when we were linked with him. We're lightly linked to him. I would say very lightly linked to him, but he's 23 years old and plays for Sporting Lisbon. And I'll pull up his profile here. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Pull up his profile. So Pedro Goncalves plays for Sporting Lisbon. Contract expires in 2025, which I think, he joined them August 18, 2020. So he's only been there for like a hot minute, right? And he plays attacking midfield. He's 23 years old, and he is on the Portuguese national team. So he was at the Euros with them. What really impressed me about this player is the amount of goals that he scored last season. So when we kind of talked about earlier how I really do feel like it's a non-negotiable for whoever we bring in for that creative midfielder position to be a goal scorer, he fits that bill. He scored 23 goals last season and had 4 assists. And I get it. He was in the Portuguese league. That's not that big of a deal. Even if you take away half of those, even if you took away 13 of those goals, 10 goals and 4 assists from your creative midfielder is quite good, right? So the guy scores goals, his positions played. He's played quite a bit of positions, but his main thing is attacking midfield, which I feel like is what we need to be looking for. And what I really like about this player, from what I've seen from watching clips and all that kind of stuff, is I like the way that he plays. I think, when we talk about ball progression, the ball being stuck to your foot, being able to beat a man, he's kind of like a tricky winger in your attacking midfield, but also has kind of like the vision of somebody like a Bruno Fernandes. So you get the best of both worlds with that, where it's not just somebody who can pick a pass like Odegaard. He has the ability to cut a player, chop, get around them, that little burst of pace past their man to get past that line and into, the next part of the pitch. And for Arsenal, I think it's important to have good ball progressors going forward, not just ball progression from a passing perspective, but from a ball on foot, type of dribbling and running with the ball and that kind of confidence to beat your man. He can do that through the middle of the pitch, so that's a special skill to have. So to have an attacking midfielder who can't, it's not just about his passing. He has the vision. He can pop the ball over the top. He can find, a cross-field ball. He can pass in between the lines. He can also go out wide and hit a nice cross and do a cutback. So he's quite versatile in his repertoire of things that he can do on the pitch in attacking positions. But what I really, really like about him is his eye for goal and the fact that he wants to score. And we need that, you guys. We really do need whoever's sitting behind or playing behind Aubameyang or the striker needs to be somebody who has an eye at goal and isn't constantly trying to force the ball to the striker. We need different types of threats. I expect Saka to take more shots than he did last season, Pepe to take more shots than he did last season, ESR to contribute with goals, and whoever plays in this position has got to have an eye for goal. So even if we want to take away half those goals, right, we want to take away half of them or whatever, because it's the Portuguese league, what we know for a fact is this guy likes to score. And if he can, get used to the Premier League, then that's a player. Like, that's a real player that we should probably be looking at. So again, we've been loosely linked with this guy, and I was quite impressed from what I saw. Like, I was ready to kind of just, sorry, you guys, to just be like, oh, no, whatever, who cares? But this is a player that, if we brought in a big central midfielder signing, somebody like Basuma or whoever you want in that midfield, and you were able to add this guy as well, even, because it won't be this, you guys. I really don't think that we'd be able to get him for 25. I think we'd have to pay at least 40, but we're talking about somebody young, up and coming talent. And wow, he scores goals, you guys. And that's really, really important. So if you haven't heard of him and you haven't really seen us linked with him, I would say that maybe take some time to look at, some of his compilations, and just from a player profiles perspective, not is he good enough or whatever, just to see how he kind of plays the game, because having somebody like that in the middle of the pitch can be super dangerous for a team that usually has somebody that likes to hit nice, pretty balls into nice spaces. He can do that, but he can also take his man on through the middle of the pitch and progress the ball that way. And I like that about him. So have you guys heard of him? What do you guys think about him? Yes, Colin, we do still understand that we need to get players out, but this is viewer's choice, and somebody asked me this question to do a little bit more digging and talking about the creative midfielder position. We have spoken about outgoings on this channel many times. Lone Star, I see you're here. We did get the outgoings for the loan players and all that kind of stuff yesterday. So although we're not talking about outgoings right now, we do touch on them quite often. And this particular show is not really about outgoings. It's just specifically about the creative midfielder position. But again, I think we know that outgoings are being taken care of. So it's not really something that we need to be super worried about, in my opinion. All right. We have a super chat here from Usab. Usab says, Pedro Goncalves, I have no clue who that is. Let's get him. We need quality everywhere on the pitch. Look, he's not somebody that people really have been talking about. And I kind of like that a little bit. You know, it's not somebody that is going to get people out of their seat. It's not somebody that rival fans are going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got him. But that's not really what matters. He's somebody that I think we could get for significantly less than what we'd have to pay for Maddison, who is 23 years old and was a part of that Portugal national team. So he has something to work for. Definitely has an eye for goal and has a good, he has a lot of different elements to the way that he plays, which makes him less predictable than maybe somebody like an Odegaard, who's kind of desperate to get on his left foot and just kind of ping a nice, ball into the box or a nice little chip ball or whatever, has great vision. This guy has so much more about him. He's so much more well-rounded, and he doesn't shirk his defensive duties, which is really important because we want to be able to press and things like that. So this is definitely a player that I know it's probably like, who is that? Why would we want somebody that nobody's ever heard of before? Some of the best players that have ever played for Arsenal Football Club were players that we probably didn't know anything about until they stepped foot, on the pitch. So I would say just take a look at this guy, look at the compilations, not from any other perspective, but just to see how he plays, and then come back and let me know what you thought, because and Clive also mentioned him, and thinks that I think he likes him as well. He's different, so yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. Najabulo says, I like him. He can be our Bruno Fernandes. Dublin Gunner says, I hope that's not a description of an injury he has. Goncalves, calves. I can only apologize for that joke. I'm not even gonna lie. When I was typing it in earlier, it literally, I put in, it said go Cavs, and I was like, wow, that's gonna be horrible. If it says go Cavs, his calves are gone or something. C. Walder says, Salvez, I don't even know how to say it, you guys, I'm sorry, is really satisfying word to say. So yeah, you guys, just take a look and let me know. I needed to give you guys an under the radar one. I didn't want to just continue to talk about the same people. So take a look at him, give it a shot. Let me know what you think. And the final person that I want to talk about is Christopher Nkunku. This is a player that I highly rate. I think we should have got him before. I really, really do. I think we missed a trick when Unai Emery wanted him and we didn't get him. But he's somebody that I think fits the mold in terms of what we'd be looking for, you know what I mean? In terms of something that can play in multiple positions, can score goals, has a good eye for a pass, but is more of a modern creative midfielder, somebody that can do a little bit more than just pick a pass. We need something more than that. And I think he's a more modern player that's played for a while. He has quite a few minutes under his belt in terms of playing in the first team and stuff like that. So he's not too green. He could step straight in. I think he's ready for another move, a bigger move. He plays for Leipzig now, if you don't know about him. So pronounce Goncalves. You guys, I will get it. I will get it right. I promise. So Christopher Nkunku is somebody that I like so much. And I think he's just so underrated. And I don't really know why. But let's just pull up his thing right now. So 23 years old. Is that it? Could have sworn he was 24 already. So 23 years old, is not on the French national team, but we know that that's a very difficult team to get into. Attacking midfield, Right now, transfer market value is about 47 million. So we would have to pay the money for this guy. We're not going to get him for cheap. He doesn't start all the time, but we do know that Nagelsmann tends to, who is now at Bayern Munich, never really played the same first 11. He rotated quite heavily, and Nkunku was kind of suffered because of that. He never really played consistently, but when he was out there, he did good things. You know, he had 6 goals and 7 assists last season, which is pretty good for somebody who didn't really start every single game. And again, he plays attacking midfielder, and he also can play off the left. And that's still a position that I think needs to be addressed. I'm not quite sure that we have the right profile right now in our left midfield position. I think we need, if it's not going to be ESR, it needs to be somebody else that's a kind of like a 10 profile. And he would really fit that if you wanted to play Emile Smith-Rowe through the middle and Nkunku off wide, and they could switch positions. And he's right-footed, which I like. I think we need to kind of maybe steer away from left-footed players, especially heavily left-footed players. We have way too many in the squad. And yeah, so he's a player that I really like as well. Young, needs probably a fresh environment. He's been at Leipzig since 2019, and I think he signed from PSG. So it might be time for him to do something else so that he could just shake it up. And he's a player that I would like, to see at Arsenal at some point. But I'm not sure if we missed it, because we really could have got him when he left PSG, and now it's a little bit like that price is looking a little steep. So let me know what you guys think about Nkunku. Usab sent in another super chat. Thank you so much. And Usab says, if you like the content and think Jessica is awesome, hit the thumbs up, people. Thank you so much. You guys make sure you hit the likes. There's about 65 of you guys watching right now, and we're going to go for just a couple more minutes. So make sure you guys like the video. Yep, Hola Donkey. Make sure that you guys do look at Goncalves. I actually really did like him. Lone Star, I liked and subscribed. Did you? Lone Star, we were looking for you yesterday. We were. Jordan Shipper says, I can't stress enough, he's perfect for the way that we play. He really is. He's so underrated. And I think that's the reason why maybe Arsenal fans are not keen on him, because there's not a lot of hype around him. But he makes so much sense in terms of what we're trying to do. And he would fit really well with those players that play behind the striker, because he can kind of fit all the way across, like in every single position. But he's older than the players that we have, so it's not like bringing another 19-year-old into the fold. And I really like that. Newman said he played a lot for PSG and then went backwards. I don't really think Leipzig has worked for him in terms of getting him to the next level in his career. He's improved, but he doesn't play enough to really make a mark, like you kind of said already. So maybe if he came to Arsenal, he'd play a lot more, I think. Let's see. Bola Donkey says, Sabitzer seems like a good deal. So here's the thing. It's like I like Sabitzer a lot, but I just can't see him at Arsenal for some reason. I just feel like we need something a little bit different. And I like the player, but there's just something about it that's not clicking. And I need to think about it a little bit more, because I'm not sure. Like, it's something about him being 15 million and nobody really snapping him up. He plays, I think Leipzig primarily plays with 2 in the midfield. We don't really play that way. I'm not quite sure that he's a box to box. Does he sit in a pivot? He does score goals, but I just don't know. And then the profile of him being about 27, 28 years old. We did that with Party, and I think the players that we bring in need to be between the ages of 23 and 25. It may not seem like that big of a difference, but to me it does. So something about Sabitzer seems like a good deal, especially because it's so cheap, but something's just not clicking there for me. I don't know what it is. Jordan Shipper's technical ability, pace, agility, versatility, set pieces, intelligence, the full package. Yep, but he's not hyped, so people don't see it, but I see it. I see it too. Molly says Danny Olmo, a player that we were also linked with. We missed out on him. I think his next move will be somewhere a little bit more, maybe not Arsenal. You know what I mean? I don't see him as an Arsenal player. I think he's quite good, but does he score enough goals? I'm not sure. I like the player. Maybe let's see if he does well, in his next year at Leipzig, and then see. But we were interested. Dumpling Gunner says, it's the pencil mustache that's making you question Sabitzer? Maybe. It's just something it's not working for me. He feels like a Tottenham player to me. Like, I know Roma's interested in him, so maybe that's where I'm getting it from. It's like I can easily see him and Xhaka sitting in a 3-4-3 for Jose Mourinho, and that just feels right. I think we need a dribbler, a ball progressor, an aggressive young player in that position, and he's not that for me. But Jess doesn't like mustaches, reminds her of Stan Kroenke. I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, he could come to the Emirates and smash it, because the thing is I like him. I think he's such a good player. I just don't know. It's just something, maybe it is the mustache. Sean says, Jess, can you get an agent on the show? Would be helpful to explain the ins and outs fans aren't privy to. I will try. I will write that down. You guys, I actually prefer when you guys give me ideas because sometimes I hit creative blocks. Again, I've called this viewer's choice because I went on Twitter and said, what do you guys want me to talk about? And I literally just did that. I got a lot of good ideas. So now I have some good content to come up for the next couple of days. But I will look into that and see if I can bring on like an agent or something to talk about this stuff. But yeah. All right, you guys, I do have to go because I have like real life things to do that aren't as fun as talking about football. Kind of sucks, but make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow, I think me and Harry are going to come on and talk about Arteta a little bit. 5 things he got right, 5 things he got wrong. And then on Friday, me and George are going to come on and talk about the youth, what players should we be excited about, the new coaching changes in the academy and things like that. So make sure you guys, and of course, I'll be on for any breaking news if, Lokonga or anybody, Tavares become confirmed, like actually like on the website or something like that. Definitely come on for those. So make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Tell a friend. Yes, is a safe space. What do you mean? Yes. No, wait. Are you going to say something? What are you going to say? Okay, say this really. Go ahead, Jordan Shipper. Say whatever you want to say really quick. Now I want to know. What is this controversial thing? Yes, this is a safe place. Thank you, Ola Donkey. Martinelli at right back. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. But yeah, no, I don't think so. So you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys. Thank you.